Scooby Doo, where are you? The new Scooby Doo, Scooby Doo and Scrappy Doo. The 13 Ghosts, a pup named Scooby Doo. What's new, Scooby Doo? Scooby and Shaggy get a clue. Scooby Doo Mystery Incorporated. Be cool, Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo and Guess Who? Scooby Doo and the Mystery Pups. There are tons of iterations of Scooby Doo, right? Tons. And CMON has put out a latest game in the line of this IP. And let me tell you, the freaking colored miniatures, the pre-painted miniatures, let me tell you, they're freaking awesome. Just screwing with you. This is a really intriguing concept, right? I am a big Scooby Doo fan. Big Scooby Doo fan here.
It's something I can really get behind.
It's a trap, Daphne.
No, this is totally reasonable.
And so we're left with the question of, right? Is this absurd? How does this differ from the other Scooby Doo games that are out there? Is it any better? Because as a big Scooby Doo fan, I have played all the other ones, pretty much all the other big ones. And I have been left lacking, right? I want a good Scooby Doo game. I crave a good Scooby Doo game, right? This IP is meant for the pandemic cooperative system as a whole. And does it really work? Well, let's talk about that for a second because it's mixed. Let's do this. The question was never, are the miniatures going to be awesome? Because these are the best pre-painted miniatures probably on the market. CMON absolutely knocks it out of the park with these. No doubt. I got my own little mystery machine here. My 2-year-old who's obsessed with trucks absolutely wants to grab it every time I pull the game out. It takes the cooperative element and it utilizes it in just a different manner, right? You have this circular board that you're going to be just circumnavigating as the mystery machine crew. All your usual characters, plus a little bit of Scrappy Doo, and nobody needs any Scrappy Doo, but they're included anyway. The issue is that you've got these 9 villains that you can go up against, and the deluxe version has 9, retail's only gonna have like 3. So that right there is already a gameplay make it or break it, especially if you actually like the game. And we'll get to that in a second. This board has a bunch of arrows on it, has a bunch of symbols on it. They're all relatively intuitive, straightforward. You're basically having a blind bluffing individual game where you're going up against one villain of your choice, potentially up to 2, depending on how hard you want to play, in one of 3 modes, easy, normal, or hard. Because you're going to be just building traps. Building traps? Okay, I mean, we all know the Scooby-Doo trope of, you know, gotta have the trap that doesn't work to actually catch the villain in a different way than they thought originally, and then they have the expose at the end. I mean, we are all familiar with that side of things, right? But in this sense, you're gonna have an initiative-based card that you're playing on a turn-by-turn basis to determine if you go before or after the monster, because the monsters card is just gonna be randomly flipped up, right? And so you don't know, potentially, there's some ability to get a little bit of foreshadowing here, what they're going to play, and you can only move so many steps, and if you run into the monster, this game gives you a different dynamic. It's not just put the fires out, right? We're all familiar with the pandemic-esque put the fires out type of game, but this is what you see is what you get. You only have this many cards, and so when you run out of cards, the game's over. That is the flavor of pandemic that you're getting in this cooperative sense, because you get 2 cards in your turn. You play one of them, you save another to the save deck. After you go through the whole deck, you grab the save deck. After you go through the save deck, you're done. That's it. And so that doesn't sound like much, but all of a sudden, this deck of cards, which is not that many, if you're playing 4 or even 3 people, that's 6 to 8 cards per turn that you're going through on a single round, where you only may get a single action. Sound a little bit underwhelming? It kind of is, to be frank with you guys. This is a game that's weird because most cooperative games, when you scale them up, right, they become easier. This is a game I would argue actually scales much easier at the lower player counts, the 1 to 2 players, because with 2 players, as well as with 1, you play, well, 2-handed with the solo person, but also 2 characters in the 2-player version. And it gives you more control because you can determine things a little bit easier with the cards that you have. So how do you feel about that? And I say that very hesitantly. I really went into this game wanting to absolutely love this game. You know me, I love cooperatives. Cooperatives are the bread and butter of my collection, of my desire, of my ability to play on a regular basis. And so when you gave me Fred, when you give me Shaggy, when you give me Scooby freaking Doo, I want it to be amazing because, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the other games in this, even the Betrayal at House on the Hill, the remake of that one with this, was crappy, relativistically speaking. The rules were subpar, the mysteries were okay, a lot of minutia, a lot of FAQ was just completely not there. And I'll say at least this game doesn't have that, but it also has just left me feeling a little bit wanting more. This is almost, and I say that very lovingly, it's too light. And I say that as someone who loves light games. It's just, I don't feel like the consequences and the actions are as meaningful in a lot of other cooperative games, right? Like you're actually doing stuff, you're getting stuff, you're moving forward, and it just doesn't seem to have it right now. Now, I haven't played through all the villains. The difficulty is definitely different on the villains. And one thing I would say is you only activate the little monster power when you've got the little icon on the actual monster card. And I feel like to make it actually a challenge, you just activate the monster ability every single time the monster moves. That's one of the pros cons as well. The traps, you can only do one at a time. Great, increased difficulty. Harder the trap, more pieces. And this is where the difficulty actually ramps up, because since you can only play one of these traps at a time, not only are your ingredients going to be split with the characters, you can't have one character necessarily have enough time to get all of the elements at the higher player counts, and so you're going to be mishing and mashing all over the board. And it's relatively easy to avoid the monster if you really want to, because the penalty for getting run into the monster is like not like Scooby Doo jail or getting tied up or getting captured, right? It's just losing 2 cards from this deck to go to your complete discard pile instead of the save pile. So it reduces your timer a little bit, but unless you're having 2 or 3 characters each round get that, you still seemingly don't run into a terrible crunch. This is really a lighter cooperative game that the aesthetic is going to be very pleasing of, and I just am going to enjoy playing. It's going to be fun, but I don't necessarily get right now the challenge out of it I was kind of hoping for, because with a game like this, with the lighter side of things, again, nothing wrong with that, but I was hoping it would also give an option for just that step up, and it just doesn't do that right now. Now, like I said, if you had the powers activating every single time with these villains, instead of just when there's, the icon on the cards, because as you can see on some of them, the icon is there, and on others, it's just not. And so that is sort of the issue. Now, I also wish that it would give you some variation of just more than the number and the color, right? Like, okay, take the path that is, 4, but going through the most heroes. I mean, that's not very hard to calculate when you've only got like 3 colors on the board, right? There's only 3 ways it can go. You can calculate that out in about 5 seconds. Just something to increase the degree of difficulty within an actual variant that goes along with this game. That's all. That's what I would love to see with this. Now, that path that you can take around the outside, the arrows are very intuitive. It allows you to tell where you're going, but also where you need to go to do certain actions, as well as how the villain is going to march around the outside in subsequent progression whenever it's their turn. It just isn't quite as satisfying, even with Marvel United to compare it to that, right? Marvel United, I play a card, but I have 2 or 3 different actions that I'm utilizing on a single turn. With this, it's okay, I play a card, I go to an area gets me basically 1 action per turn per person. So you need to be cooperative, but you don't ultimately need to, do a whole lot always. So it's not easy to win all the time, because you can have snowballing effects and you can have the bad initiative just kind of SOL you. But ultimately, most of the time I've played, control has been very much in my grasp. Now, I probably will say, though, the saving grace of this game, just like Marvel United X-Men, in that similarity is the villains. The villains do have some variety, but unfortunately, just like Marvel United in the commonality there, that there are ones that are also just kind of rather lackluster. And your mileage may vary depending on what you're going for, especially if you get the retail version, just like the original Marvel United, where the villains really didn't encapsulate what this game was actually capable of. And that's where it sort of is very roller coaster as well, if you will. Each member of Mystery Inc. also contains a special one-time use ability that encapsulates their role within the mystery solving group as well, which is a nice touch to give you a just push when you need it. All in all, I mean, I like it. Is it worth the $60 to $90 depending on shipping and what the cost point was, however much that it ended up being for backers at this point? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. If you would have told me this was $50, 55, I could probably justify it very easily. Crossing the $60, $70, $80 mark, including that shipping, it's where it becomes, okay, I'm just not sure. Because the other thing I'll say is, although you've got a lot of villains, I wouldn't mind seeing just a little bit more spice of life like we saw in Marvel United X-Men compared to the original Marvel United. All in all, I mean, it's a solid game. I'm happy to have played it. I love Scooby Doo, so you have to take that with a grain of salt. Like, if you didn't have any affiliation with Scooby Doo, I could see you either being, oh yeah, this is kind of really cool. This is a unique thematic incorporation experience cooperative game. But I could also see you saying, I don't have any attachment to this IP and it just isn't doing enough from a game hardcore, I want something more difficult cooperative sense. So that's what you're doing. That's what you're seeing. That's the game in a nutshell. Those are my thoughts. Scooby Dooby Doo, be cool, Scooby Dooby Doo. And this one, you know, from cool, mini, or not, ultimately, it's going to leave some people, though, a little bit lukewarm. And that's slightly disappointing in the sense of what could have been compared to what it actually is, because it's not a bad game. It's got a very solid foundation, but it needs a few of those tweaks that I mentioned to just give it that next level, to make it okay, this is a nice cooperative game instead of a jinkies zoinks type of game that it could have been if its full potential had been realized in the end. Is it going to stand the test of time? That is the question. I'm really going to be intrigued to see where I feel about this one about a year from now, or even 6 months from now, because I could see myself really having loved it and really incorporating it with the kids. I could also see it being sold because, you know, I have the Kickstarter version with the extra villains and there's not going to be a great supply of those. So I'm not worried about like losing money on it or anything or collecting dust. But like I said before in a lot of my videos, I don't buy this to sell this. I really want to like this. So we'll see where it ends up. Let me be very clear though, at the same time, I enjoy playing this game, and that's the factor that ultimately what it comes down to and why it may end up staying in my collection much longer than what its mechanics may otherwise lead you to believe. But there you go. My thoughts, Scooby Doo Animation Collection. Thanks for watching. Stay classy. Do the YouTube thing. See you later. Peace out.